he can have Somerset. I'll stick to St. George's. I went to St. George's earlier this week. No problems, no stress. I went west. I went toward the west. All the stoplights and all that, it just drove me crazy.
It's below the belt.
Miss B,
she has hit below the belt.
Miss B,
that's been my pet peeve. I talk about it more than anybody else.
But Miss B, I've delivered it. Okay.
I can't even answer that. I mean, what am I supposed to say to that?
Well, nothing.
There's nothing I could possibly say to that.
She don't want to have nothing to do with Somerset.
I'm not sure we invited her west anyway. So let's just be clear about that. We accept a lot of visitors who we don't actually acknowledge.
She's listening to you.
I hope she is.
That's right.
Right? Mm-hmm. And let me tell you.
What?
I live after the last lights, heading west. So if I have to stop on the street, I saw the license plate of that car. And I'm Southampton Parish Council. I'm just joking. That ain't. No, let me take that back. I'm not. No, my members now getting in trouble.
Okay.
Nothing like that at all. Nothing like that at all. But yes, living in the West at the moment and has been for the last part of last year.
Yes.
When you have political leaders who don't seem to care about the public. It happens. Last night, I had to go east, at about 6:45.
Yeah.
Such was the frustration of the traffic still trying to get west, rush hour, right? This is now getting up to 7, okay? That the light had turned green, the temporary light, right? We were heading east.
Right.
That light had turned green. We couldn't move because another 22 cars came even though their light was red. But I understand there's a frustration of trying to get home, right? And there's only one road west after the junction.
Yes, it's true.
Right? I've been talking about this since last year, right? And today, coming into the station, an ambulance had to come from the west.
Oh, no.
Fortunately for the ambulance, right? You just imagine, you can't, when that temporary light means down to one lane, that ambulance isn't going to get up the lane if there's traffic in that one lane, right?
Then what exactly?
Really, I have written to I'll spare him. The person you would want me to write to, I've written on behalf of the residents of Somerset, of Sands, and Southampton.
Right.
In terms of the council and some things that the government may wish to consider in order to alleviate the frustration and the real thing I was concerned about was the emergency vehicles. Right. You can't just spring helicopter blades and pick up and then land at King Edward.
Yeah.
And so those lights are seriously impacting medical response.
Wow.
But don't worry, Belco is going to have their lines buried. And Watlington will have their water buried. And Bill paid us that. That's what matters. Right? I tell you, you shouldn't have. Miss B, you knew better. Or he knew better. One of you two shouldn't have done that. How are you going to do that to me, man, on a day like this?
Well, it's the reality,
Yeah, but reality, and let me just also say, Miss B, remember we had somebody call in.
Yes.
Roads aren't that bad. And then another caller said, I want the car she drives.
There you go.
So one other thing, I kind of want to explain something a little bit here.
Sure.
So this week, we've been talking largely about international business / Cayman. Okay? That was not the intent.
Right.
So I kind of want to just explain a little something here.
Sure.
All right. I thought that we were going to be discussing like the Bermudan economy, right? And I wanted to lance the boil or pop the bubble or remove the veil of the average Bermudian and international business. And I didn't really care if it was intentional or not. So were we intentionally not aware of the international business sector of our economy?
Yes.
Or was it just, just goes that way? We care about the things we're interested in and we figure, hey, they do what they do. So instead, though, we ended up in Cayman. I did not realize that rabbit hole was going to take us there.
Right.
You remember I spoke about the man in the House of Lords talking about money that Bermuda earns from the Chiquita bananas.
Yes.
Right? And I'm going to remind of that. So I thought I was just going to explain a little bit about the Bermudan economy,
Right.
what international business is, and by today, we would have been having around the world
Yes.
talking about any number of things. But the vibes, messages, guidance, discernment, whichever, took us where it took us.
Yes.
And now on Thursday, and we won't be back until Monday, I sort of want to, as best I can, frame what we've learned this week and kind of the purpose now that we've been through it. So I can't say it was the purpose when it began, because I didn't know this is where we were going. But can I start by asking you a question?
Sure.
Before this week, let's say, and now let's say, what's your sense of international business in Bermuda? Like, do you have a different or a whatever sense of it today?
I know the importance of it as a pillar, right? That is it. But also, I see this. I see the separation between, and I know they do things to really come into the community and be a part of life as it is in Bermuda. But there's still that separation. And I want to know, I was, well, you know, in my capacity when I was in the hotel, I did a lot of banquets. So I got to know people to continuously, like a bear. They had, at the hotel, they had a lot of banquets and what have you, meetings, et cetera, et cetera. So I got to know people and I got familiar with them. And there's some cool people.
No, I didn't expect it. You know, sometimes people say, you don't know what's coming out of YouTube. Let me tell you, I did not see that coming.
No, but I got to know them on a different level. And I think in Bermudian life, I think we're missing that type of thing, whereas we see people according to how, I guess, their occupation, their profession, and whatever. And that seems to separate us from people. Well, we don't look at them as, I hate to say this word, but human.
Yeah. Well, if you're a hammer, you only see nails.
Yes.
If you are concerned about your level of wealth or thing, you're only going to see people according to their wealth.
Yes.
If you feel powerless, you will see people according to their power or your perceived version of their power.
I'm going to share a story with you.
Excellent.
Okay. At Princess, I used to bartender. Right?
Sorry?
At the Princess, I used to bartender.
Okay.
So I was behind the bar, and it was these guys. They were in residence. This is like 20 odd years ago. They were in residence in the hotel.
What does that mean?
In other words, they stayed in the hotel, but worked in international business.
Oh, right. Okay.
These are some big shots.
I got you now.
And they were not, one of them, I remember his name, Jack. I forget what the other. And let me tell you, these guys used to drink. They will come from your, hey, how
Thank
you
God
doing?
you couldn't remember Jack's last name.
Right? And let me tell you, we built up such a camaraderie with them that they used to come in, as soon as they come in, that drink would be on there, bam, on the bar.
Yeah.
I said, what you going to have to eat? Let me order it, go in the kitchen and order it for you. He said, I feel like some steak. I said, medium rare as usual? He said, yes. I said, I know you want your potatoes because you're a steak and potato man. And we had a good rapport. I'm going to tell you something what he done. He was in reinsurance, right? We had one of our working mates actually had an accident where he was going to lose an eye. All above his eye, all that was cut up and everything else. And he didn't have the insurance to cover it. When they found out about it, we're talking about the reinsurance capital of the world.
Yep.
Okay? They arranged for him to get this operation overseas by hooking him up with some insurance. And he ran away and they saved his eye.
You see this?
So like I say, we see these people, but we have to incorporate them into our community. Because if we're dependent on them, they also depend on us. Don't get it wrong now. We have created an environment for them to live safely and to go to our beaches and enjoy our beaches and everything else. We have set that environment. Okay?
Absolutely right.
So I wanted to share that with you. It ain't all bad. You see them out in the pubs and whatever. We have to It's too much separation in this country.
Well, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
Remember cassava? Everybody has cassava, and maybe go do cassava and Causeway, right?
Yes.
But the point you were just making, it's such an important part because they're saying the MPs and ministers are saying this in Cayman now in trying to recover and rebuild.
Right.
But the point he made, and I'm probably not going to be able to find it, but the MP was saying business doesn't thrive if the people aren't happy.
Yes.
Right? If the country isn't stable, then how can business thrive?
Yes.
I won't find it, but that's to your point. Right? And so I didn't want people to we can think what you want about Cayman, but I realized the thrust I was trying to make was oftentimes the threats that are used to follow up some policy that we don't like.
Yes.
Right? Oh, we need to do this. I know you're not happy about it, but you want to go back to fishing and farming?
Yes.
And you better suck it up. The old days aren't coming back. This is the new way. You want to go back to fishing and farming? Right? Those threats, okay?
Yes.
They either do the same thing. And can I just go off on a minute here?
Sure.
Not go off like angry.
But I got you.
Try to stay with me here. Okay, so last night I got to thinking about where we are and all of this.
Right.
And I thought about the Race Relations Act of 1969 and the Black Power Conference.
Okay, yes.
And it got me thinking that the system, the system back then, remember the example I gave, if you were a white, not racist Bermudian, and you open the paper and you see Roosevelt Brown, Public America Fago, saying British troops are here.
Yes.
You might think, oh, wow, really? Okay, but the next day you open the paper, and the premier, the governor, and the head of the regiment say, there are no troops here. So you now think, you see, that's the problem with you all. You think, what kind of problem? You having a conference?
Right.
You got this ideas of grandeur. It's not even all of that.
Right.
Right? You think you got troops here. Why would we have troops here for a conference about talking?
Yes.
I think that'd be a legitimate thought.
Right.
But then 2 days later, they have to admit the very number. Right? So Ruth says 80 troops are here.
Yes.
Nobody is here. 2 days later, 80 troops here for a conference.
Wow.
So now, if you're that non-racist Bermudian, you think, oh, chingas. They brought in 2 warships and the SAS.
Yes.
Right? They didn't bring in the guys that direct traffic. These aren't the guards from Buckingham Palace.
Right.
These are the guys that go in Afghanistan.
Yes.
Right? These are the guys front line in Northern Ireland. That's who's here?
Yes.
My word. Right? It would frighten you. Right?
Yes.
Well, let's flip the script and also sprinkle on top what Frantz Fanon described as neo-colonialism.
Okay.
Right? And this is also what Dr. who left us up at the college, Charles Curtis Tweed.
Okay, yes.
She spoke about neo-colonialism in the education system. And so if you now take, those days are done, right? And you now come on, and instead of being concerned about the troops and race and black people, and therefore we have to hold them down, therefore we can't legalize cannabis, therefore we can't have a good relationship with CARICOM, we must let them know they're not like the Caribbean, they're not, there's black people that come here too, and carry on, right? So in the face of that, does that still happen today? Does that fear factor still oppress Bermudians? And is it really weaponized against black Bermudians? Well, let's jump to international business.
Yes.
What are we told? That we are read out.
Yes.
They want to devote half the qualifying time to become a permanent resident.
Yes.
Not one particular plan about attracting emigrating Bermudians back to Bermuda. Nothing. And I can give you 5 that are on top of my head right now.
Well,
I'm not a minister. I'm not a permanent secretary. I'm not an MP. I don't sit in caucus and debate these things. But there are all of them, plus all of them in the opposition.
Yes.
This is what we're looking for, vision from our political leaders. Seems to be lacking at the moment.
Yes.
But now the fear is they may leave. You have to give them what they want. This is the cost.
Yes.
We've just read Cayman, right? Cayman has to say the most patriotic speeches I've ever read and then sprinkle on top of that, but we don't hate you.
Yes.
Our immigration is about inclusion, not exclusion.
Yes.
Putting Caymanians first in Cayman is just sensible. It's not hatred.
Right.
They got to say all of this to prove, not just to the international business, but to their own people. That's the real, because politicians created that scenario.
Yes.
So, trusting politicians to fix that scenario? Well, I read a letter to the editor yesterday. That woman was furious.
Okay.
Right? Who was talking about Cayman and the problems that Cayman has in this new world, and whether these folks are... Where is it? Let me see if I can find that one for you.
Yeah, I want to hear that.
You forgot that one?
No, I'm trying to think. No.
Should I read it again?
Please.
Well, it's a little... Okay. Let me see if I can find it. Just give me a minute. You sure I should reread this?
Yes, reread.
Okay, so I think one of the good things about this, if I can put my hands on it, is that in all of the patriotic stuff that we heard from the MPs and ministers,
Right.
and the cries of people who couldn't get a job, and even the politicians thought they had to balance out what they're doing for Caymanians with business, this person writes what I would say is a pretty clear letter to the editor.
Okay.
This was sent on January the 9th to the Cayman Compass. No, the Cayman News Service website.
Okay.
I can't believe I'm going to read this again, but okay. And they were Salty Sea Grape, if you remember the username.
Yes.
Salty Sea Grape.
Yeah.
So you still want you? No, you remember?
Yes,
you still want me?
I remember it, but still.
Okay. I can't stay silent anymore. My country, the Cayman Islands, is being pulled apart. And at the root of it is not one policy, not one crisis, but a pattern of foolish governance, short-sighted decisions, political band-aids sold as solutions, promises designed to survive an election cycle, not a generation. The consequences of this are no longer theoretical. They are already reshaping the country our children will inherit. I don't care about the rest of my life in the abstract. I care about my children's lives. I care about whether they will have a country that still feels like home, whether they will be able to retire here, whether Cayman will still belong to Caymanians in any meaningful sense. And standing where we are today, I generally don't know what that future looks like. The new immigration reforms have ripped open a wound that has been festering for years. Instead of thoughtful, balanced policy, we are watching the social fabric of Cayman tear further apart. Caymanians on one side, expatriates on the other, pitted against each other in a way that feels increasingly irreparable. This is not accidental. This is what happens when leadership avoids hard truths and chooses expediency over responsibility. As an educated, well-meaning Caymanian, I can no longer sit quietly while the loudest and often most ignorant voices dominate the narrative online and in public discourse. Comment sections have become breeding grounds for hatred, misinformation, and even outright racism. And while we scroll past in disgust, those voices are shaping perception, policy pressure, and ultimately outcomes. The educated Caymanians, the ones who understand nuance, history, economics, and consequence, have to speak up. Silence is no longer neutrality. It is surrender. For years, I've tried to build a roadmap in my own mind. Chicken or egg, education or immigration, cost of living or opportunity. And the uncomfortable truth I keep coming back to is this: the common denominator is political leadership. We can debate symptoms endlessly, but we cannot fix a system led by people who are not equipped intellectually, morally, or strategically to govern in a modern, global, fast-moving world. Cayman, my beautiful country, wake up. You cannot ask something old, outdated, and ill-prepared to control a world defined by complexity, technology, and rapid change. You cannot demand progress while voting for the same tired excuses of representatives that, let's get real, would not be employable anywhere else if they weren't career politicians. And this is not about elitism, it's about competence. How can we ask for better outcomes when we accept leaders who cannot articulate policy clearly and who cannot communicate coherently, who cannot think beyond slogans and sound bites. Yes, we have had some dedicated and capable representatives over the years. That matters, and it should be acknowledged. But the reality is that those with the most power have too often been complete embarrassments, and we can only blame ourselves. We don't vote for new blood because they don't have the experience. But tell me this, how much of that old experience is even relevant in this day and age? How much of it has actually served us well? We need new ideas. We need non-biased representatives. We need representatives who will actually be alive to reap what they sow, and not just leave it as a whoops, I messed up, but I'll be dead soon anyway. After reading the countless hateful, even racist comments across several media platforms, I can only come to one conclusion. Encourage a new wave of leadership or accept the slow burn of defeat. Change starts in 2029. And it starts with Caymanians understanding that long-term national interest must outweigh loyalty to familiar names and personalities, even when choosing differently feels uncomfortable. Sincerely, one pissed off Caymanian. There was a real quick wrap-up of the MPs who spoke in the House and came in today. Right. I just want to run through some of those because I didn't read all of the speeches. I did obviously not. We're not trying to do that. Okay. But I want to give you an idea and imagine this is, again, I'll say it one more time for the week, prevention is better than cure. Yeah. And so one MP, and let me say, this person, this is how I stopped her. I stopped myself going down a rabbit hole, really.
Okay.
This person who did this is named Heather Bodden, Bodden.
Okay.
And in brackets, when they have them, they say like what the people's role was. So Michael Miles, he's the Minister for Caymanian Employment and Immigration, and he talks about things. This is Heather Bodden, MP and Parliamentary Secretary.
Okay.
Seems odd to me.
Yeah.
A Parliamentary Secretary holding an elected office. Not permanent secretary, right? Parliamentary secretary.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, it seems weird. But she says, no Caymanian seeking honest work should feel invisible in their own country. The moral imperative of this reform is simple. Caymanians must come first. Another minister, J. Ebanks, said the changes were needed to help Caymanians get back on and move forward. Another one emphasized that being pro-Caymanian meant ensuring fairness for locals. Another independent MP noted the frustration of Caymanians who felt unable to succeed in their own country. Opposition leaders supported the bill as a necessary step, highlighting the impact of population growth on Caymanians. And then they go on to speak about there was some concern about backfire. And I do want to leave Cayman, believe it or not, really. We're getting out of it. But I do want to do two things before we go. Number one, there's an article I have here called, and this is it's almost a full magazine. This is a very, very long article. Very, very good information. If anybody wants to check it out, it's on the CaymanCompass.com, or Cayman Compass, that's a news site. So it's on their website, the Cayman Compass. And the question is Cayman facing a brain drain?
Oh.
Locals living overseas say yes. Let me tell you one of these. So I stopped myself from going down the rabbit hole of how you get to be an MP and a parliamentary secretary.
Right.
I stopped myself going down a second rabbit hole, and that is this. Two of the articles I read on the show about Cayman, one was written by a reporter named Raymond Haney, and another one was written by a reporter named James Whitaker.
Okay.
Both of those gentlemen worked in Bermuda.
Wow.
And so you kind of wonder, right? They were here writing for the Royal Gazette.
Yes.
And business stuff. You take ideas where you go to Cayman, you just write stuff that you write here and there.
Yes.
I say, hey, you guys ever thought of creating something like called the Association of Caymanian Insurers? You should think about that.
And they're bright. Overnight.
Brilliant, right? Good on consulting to government simply because they read. Anyway. Mobile and highly mobile talent.
Yes.
Okay. So this was from 2024.
Okay. Wow. Got you.
September. And we were told, I'm not going to read the whole articles. Like I said, it's kind of long. And I just want to give you some articles, some examples. One of the things I do also want to say is we spoke about ABIC and ABIR in particular, the contribution to Bermuda through scholarships and other things. And I'll remind our listeners about that again before we go. But we spoke about the fact that Cayman, one of the MPs in their speech said they had 1,800 Caymanians on scholarship. Right? And so the government, and I was thinking about this last night, if you have 1,800 students on scholarship and the economy isn't hiring them, what's the return that you're looking for, right, on that investment? And these students are taking these scholarships with an obligation to come back to Cayman for 3 years. And people are still not hiring them. Right? It made me wonder if the insurance companies top up the government scholarship program, because 1,800 is a very big number.
Significant, yeah, it is.
By the way, how many did you say Bermuda's government?
What was it, 71?
Oh, it's a little bit less than 1,800. Okay, this is from September 2024.
Right.
Cayman is facing a brain drain of some of its brightest young talent because of lack of opportunities and the high cost of living on the islands. Despite spending around, ready?
Yeah.
$13 million annually on higher education scholarships, some binding students into contracts that compel them to return home after university, there appears to be an increase in the number of young people choosing to live overseas. And then it talks about people that they interviewed. They coupled with the perception of a concrete ceiling for locals in key professions, including tourism and financial services sectors. They question whether the pathway to meaningful careers really exists in Cayman. They were speaking about different things. Someone said, I don't want to live paycheck to paycheck. Another mid-career marketing professional told us she would like to come home but couldn't find a job that would match what she's paid in the U.S. And it's not a matter of want, she said. I need the top salary that fits my experience. Otherwise, I can't get by in Cayman. Government does not keep statistics on immigration. You asked. I thought I would pause and let you get your reaction in. Government does not keep statistics on immigration, although Cayman Connection, a social and professional network for Caymanians overseas, now has around 2,000 members. The membership figure for what is a voluntary group represents just a fraction of the total Cayman Islands nationals living abroad. In the absence of data, this is necessarily a story built on anecdote and personal testimony. But some key themes emerge from our interviews with multiple Caymanians overseas preparing to leave or who have returned home after stints abroad. Their biggest concerns were around breadth and diversity of opportunity, perceptions of nepotism and progress based on tenure rather than talent, and a dramatically increasing cost of living that makes it difficult to return to Cayman after times overseas. Now, I need to pause before I go on and simply say we have a report from 2013 that determined Bermuda was suffering a brain drain of the people who had already left. So if the report was published in 2013, it clearly doesn't cover anything from 2014 to 2025. And yet, at that early point, 48% of the people left Bermuda had degrees. And we only had 22% of people in our workforce with degrees. By 2025, that number had gone to 53% of the people who left Bermuda at the millennial age group between 17 and 42 had degrees. And we're talking about an aging workforce in this country. Young people, okay? So I need to say that. And secondly, diversity of career and cost of living was what was in the 2013 Bermudian government report and the 2024-2025 government report on immigration. This is not a lack of data. We know why Bermudians are leaving Cayman. Some aren't coming home. I would hate to be, I'd be embarrassed if I was governing a country where people were leaving to be a small fish in a big sea because their home isn't giving them a quality of life that they believe they're entitled to. Yes. And they are entitled to.
Yes.
So for me, you'd be saying, what about the whatevers? I say, I'm sorry, I'm focused on getting Bermudians back. Mm-hmm. Premier Butterfield, you're forgetting about that. I'm so sorry. Give that to Willie. I'm focused on getting Bermudians back. Because guess what happens if you fix that? Imagine what life is like for everybody else.
Yes, yes.
You've had to fix it. Sorry. It's about political leadership. Sorry, I'm going to go back to Cayman. It's safer in Cayman than it is in Birmingham. Here's the headline. From culinary school to making sandwiches. Stephanie Banks' disenchantment started during his internship at the Ritz-Carlton Resort. He worked summers at the hotel. Really? Mm-hmm. I want you to, you worked in a hotel. Mm-hmm. Listen to this story. We'll just call him Stephen. His disenchantment started during his internship at the Ritz-Carlton Resort. He worked summers at the hotel while completing his bachelor's degree at the Johnson & Wales University Culinary Arts program. During that time, he says he worked longer hours, took overtime shifts, and never called in sick in an effort to break the prevailing perception of lazy Caymanians. He completed his studies and obtained a master's degree in tourism management. In an interview with The Compass back in 2012, Ebanks, then 18, talked about his passion for cooking and his ambitions to become a food and beverage director at the Ritz-Carlton and Cayman's tourism minister. Right? He was 18.
Wow.
But on returning to Cayman after graduation, he found it difficult to even get onto the first rung of that career ladder. The best job I could get was at Subway, he said. There were a few entry-level opportunities, but nothing with any mobility or chances to get into management. That contrasted sharply with his fellow graduates who he saw advancing much more quickly. He took a manager's job at a Sweet Green restaurant in Philadelphia and never looked back. He now earns a high six-figure salary as director of operations for a growing food company. In quotes, I think it's a shame I could not prosper in my own country, but I'm treated as a king in foreign lands. Now 31, you're at that age.
Yeah.
Now 31, he sees little prospect of being able to afford to return to Cayman. He says on high six figures.
That'll be another topic. You touched on something in what you just read, and it was lazy Caymanians.
The career path is not there, he insists, pointing to the fact that the industry's top-tier staff tend to remain in position for a long time. I would never have gotten that opportunity in Cayman Islands. Nobody would take a chance on me. When he looks around the boardrooms and executive positions in Cayman, particularly in hospitality, he says he doesn't see many faces like his. The CEOs are not Caymanian. The human resources managers are not Caymanian. I don't see how I will ever be able to get home because there's no opportunity for me there. The only thing would be to come home and run for politics and try to change things. Some of the smartest people I know are working in Canada, Dubai, and the UK. They are not coming back to Cayman. One of those, this is a new heading now, funding fungible. One of those people that would like to come back is Geordie Rankin. As a private chef based in Florida and working with celebrities like record producer Timbaland, he's making a name for himself in the U.S., but his dream is to come back to Cayman with his family, including 2 young children, and start his own restaurant. Cayman culture is disappearing, and food is a big part of that. There is no modern contemporary Cayman restaurant. It's partly a consequence of the small market, but compared to the U.S., he says the opportunities to get funding for a startup restaurant are limited in Cayman. I had opportunities to learn and grow more in the U.S., he said. Now that I'm ready to move back home, I don't think I can afford to. On a recent visit to Cayman, he said, he was shocked by the cost of living. Even with a good salary, he believes it would be difficult to support his young family. I also struggle with the moral part of it, he said. Who am I to say that I deserve to be paid more than another person? But I would need a certain amount to support my family. Wow. I could go on, right? But this is why this week I didn't want to take many calls, because we all have stories. Godsons, sons, us, ourselves, cousins, who, but I wanted to, 2 things I wanted to show. One, again, the reporter did not divulge the race of those Caymanians,
He just said Caymanians.
the race did not matter.
Yeah.
They feel, and the ministers and MPs in Parliament also feel, so they must be right, that it's Caymanians who have the thing, who need the help, who need the priority. It's not about race. And I make that point because I understand our country's history. What are you going? What are you smiling about?
No, when you talk about race, I know in Bermuda, I can only think of what's said amongst our politicians, and you hear it a lot: us against them.
Right.
That's not positive.
No.
It's separating. So if we're going to be separated, how do we operate as one? It's impossible.
That's the Marley song. They don't want us to unite. All they want us to do is keep on fussing and fighting. Right? So what happens is the one party gets labeled as anti-Bermudian, right? Because they apparently want to do this, that, and the third with immigration.
Yes.
And that issue is such an emotional one and resonates at almost a primal level with Black Bermudians that you get to say they are bad, we are good, and the actual data shows they've been far worse than the party who apparently was messing with our future.
Yeah.
Okay? The data isn't even, right? Like, go argue with your child, right? It's not even close. And so the issue is that balance.
Yeah.
Okay? So we've heard Cayman. Listen to this. This is ABEAR. 1,472 Bermudians, spouses of Bermudians, and PRC holders were employed in international business in 2024. Okay?
Well, okay.
Nearly 70% of the full-time workforce is now Bermudian. Nearly 70%. That is a 46% increase in Bermudian employment over the last 10 years.
Wow.
Okay? So it doesn't appear on data we're going down in terms of Bermudian involvement in international business.
Right.
It would appear we are increasing our participation and sort of working in it.
Yes.
I do know, right? We have some very, very senior people there. The hard numbers, ABEAR, in terms of them hiring law firms and doctors firms, and I guess, and dentists and accountants, just other legal accounting, IT, and all of that.
Right.
They spent $117 million in Bermuda doing that in 2024.
Wow.
In the same year, another $99 million on construction, real estate, office, and housing rents. And in terms of scholarships, in 2024, $1.25 million in scholarships was given to Bermudian students, nearly 100 paid internships for Bermudian students, and they gave $7.3 million to charities. All that's in 1 year, okay, in 2024.
Okay.
And I said it to say that we are not Cayman. But if we don't know why we're not Cayman, or if the current political leadership doesn't understand that there is a Cayman out there with that demographic, with that problem, because it only took them 3 years.
Yeah.
Right? And the numbers I read out yesterday, between 2021 and 2022, that was, they have identified, not Corey, they have identified that was the year. And my little analysis was that perhaps, right, I'll read it out. The interval from 2021 to 2022 marked a pivotal moment. During this year, the expatriate count surged by 30%. At the same time, the Caymanian population increased by less than 2%, meaning for about every 2 additional Caymanians, 30 expats moved to the jurisdiction.
Wow.
Okay, so for every 2 Caymanians, 30 expats.
Wow.
Now, the same people who were in office when this happened are still in Parliament today. They're the opposition, okay? But they're still there today. And my point is, politics left to itself with uninspired leaders will produce what Cayman produced. If you were to ask, are we Cayman? Most definitely not. We are not Cayman. But in considering why not, I did give this some thought. Okay, ABIC, ABIR, and BILTIR. ABIC is the Association of Bermuda International Companies. ABIR, the Association of Bermudian Insurers and Reinsurers.
Yes.
BILTIR, Bermuda, oh my word, I can't believe this is going out of my head, but long-term reinsurers.
Right.
Okay? And so they're basically long-term people.
Yes.
Okay? So those are the three, if you will, main business associations that represent the business of Bermuda, the businesses who are in Bermuda. And I think people got quite angry when I read out from ABIC them speaking about what they've done for work permit policy and term limits, right? And people were not aware that an international business would be lobbying like that. We then incorporated the Suriname company and then realized we'd be acting the same way. If I was the chief operating officer and you needed me to stay and the work permit said 3 years, you need me, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Notwithstanding, we knew when I went down it was going to be 3 years. So how is it that we're not Cayman? I think we're not Cayman due to our forefathers in the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s.
Yeah.
Long before we even had the industry. You see, when I think about Turks and Caicos,
Right.
Bermuda and Cayman, and maybe I shouldn't link those three together, but I can tell you stories about Turks and Bermuda from the 1700s and 1600s. So there's a bit of that, why I have an idea about Turks and Cayman. But I think we very often in Bermuda don't stop because the media isn't the media that's going to do a documentary on overcoming some racism.
Yes.
Okay, it's not gonna. That's not their interest.
Right.
Okay, and let me not get in trouble. That's just not their interest, and so it's very difficult to celebrate some progress that's been made on either equity, race relations, whatever you wish to call.
Right.
And the real challenge is, and I mean the real challenge, is it's very easy to keep wearing the mask if nobody tells you take it off. So it's very easy to hear stuff about Cayman and think, that's us.
Yeah, it's true.
When ABIC and ABIR are putting over $1.5 billion in the economy every year. When they actually have given out 700 scholarships.
Yes.
When I can name 3 CEOs right now who are black in international business.
Yes.
And I don't know international business like that, okay? And what I'm getting at is that's race. You notice, you see how I just did that?
Yes.
We don't even consider that being Bermudian could be something that's holding you back.
Yeah.
We don't even, not us out here.
Right.
In there, I'm about to get into it, okay? But what I would like to do is, since we're kind of still dealing with 2034 and what the country is we wanted to see, we can't deal with immigration in abstract. That's what our political leaders have done to us for 40 years. Right? They've either frightened us with, we got to do this because you don't go back to fish farming, or can you believe they're doing this? And then behind their back doing worse.
Yes.
Right? Or to now say, right, and Cayman, they put it right there in Parliament, right? For those who say Cayman will be less interested, hey, 8,000 businesses left the other day. It had nothing to do with immigration. Businesses come, leave, and don't think they're not that dumb. They use complex decisions as to when they're going to move and why.
Yes.
For those who say we're creating a culture war, if you think saying Cayman's come first then Cayman, you're the problem, not me. You're just, right? That's so. Having said that, I did want to read something that I'm going to try to read as much as possible, because I think the note that I have here that I wanted to say, basically, to myself, to you all, is, no, let me ask you, really.
Sure.
I have an opinion on this. You know how psychologically some of us think international business is this separate island in Bermuda?
Yeah.
Right? Like, they're the ones who go to the restaurants for lunch. They're the ones who, right? Whatever,
Yes.
okay? But let me ask, do you think that sector could have been, or do you think was, albeit the UBP was in power at the time, was built considering the wider Bermudian society or not considering the wider Bermudian society? What do you think?
Not considering.
Really?
No.
You honestly think that?
I honestly say, I mean, barring the fact that they brought a substantial amount of income into Bermuda, and the effect of them going to restaurants and taking advantage of our service and whatever, that's significant. But I look at it from this point of view. Where do we get the mix? Is it a local and IB staff place where we meet and we could mingle? The social aspect of it is missing.
Okay. It's funny, but you keep doing this. All right, I'm going to read. To the point you really just made, I'm going to read. I'm going to just read this part, and then I'll.
Okay.
This is a Black Bermudian male. Our spending patterns are different. Where I will go on the weekend, and what local businesses get the proceeds of the gains I've earned in international business look very different from other people's activities. We have a very important role to play, not just in who gets that wealth, but how that wealth is distributed island-wide.
Yeah.
So this gentleman is saying that his work colleagues don't spend their money where he spends his.
Yeah.
You were just told about the social mingling, right? And so let's just assume, and I don't want to make any disparaging comments here, but let's say there are guys who work together all week.
Right.
One is an expat and one's a Black Bermudian. It's Friday. If it's not a business function,
right,
are they likely to go to the same place for that happy hour drink?
That's true.
Okay. And this is the weird part.
Right.
What if there's a white Bermudian male and a white expat? Are they likely to go to the same place for that happy hour drink?
That's a good question.
Okay. And then a third one.
Right.
Does the Black and the white Bermudian colleagues go to the same place for that drink? Okay.
Yeah.
So that mix of Black, white, upper, lower class, whether you go to Kroll Club or Aswad Arms, whether you eat at Spotlight or Trotteria, right? I guess it all comes out in the wash somehow. But to his point, it's not trickle-down economics, right? It's where he's intentionally spending his money and where other people intentionally spend their money, given who they are in Bermuda or given their interests, right? Or given their demographic.
Okay. Let me explain something. Been in the hotel, and we have put together a program, I forget how many years ago, but you'll know about the event that used to be Happy Hour at the Hamilton Princess.
Yes, I've heard about that. Yep.
Let me tell you. So the management team sat down and we talked about it. I'm talking about food and beverage. The tribe was a part of. Yeah. We sat down and we talked about it. We came up, actually it was a commercial that I did for it.
Okay.
Right?
Got you.
Let me tell you, when you said Hamilton Princess, and you said they had a carving station, you know, like you get in Brazil, you get this big piece of beef, and you're just slicing it, and people are coming to get it. We had soup station, like a fish chowder station, and different little things. We used to make stupid money within 3 hours. You won't believe it, how much money. But you looked at the majority of the people that were there, it wasn't reflective of the community.
Ah, okay.
And we have events like Sail,
Sail GP?
Yeah. You look at, you get Bermudians that get up there. And once again, even I'm guilty of it, because when I think of things like that, I think of color.
Okay.
Okay? When you look at, say, LGP, you have Bermudians. I'm going to say it, black Bermudians.
I was wondering, because you keep saying, I think you're interchanging, when I said that earlier, racist used as a dog whistle. And I'm sitting there going, I got to deal with this one.
Yes. Black Bermudians.
Thank you.
You will see them, right? But the majority of the, sometimes you wonder, where did these people come from? But I'm going to tell you something more recent. Remember when they, around Christmas time, they had that, they opened St. George's and people were able to
the walk, the National Trust Walk. The National Trust Walk.
I felt like a minority because it's certain events that I say white people gravitate to and black people don't.
And the other way around.
And the other way around. It's true. Somehow in this country, I don't think we've promoted us really getting together. That's my feeling.
I am, they said this about America and Bermuda, that the most racist hour is church on a Sabbath or Sunday.
Oh,
okay?
God, yes.
Now, that's church, worshiping a creator.
Yes.
You're talking about socializing.
Yes.
I would, I don't really, this is not where I wanted to go, but I would just say this. There's design all the time about who comes to your event, who feels comfortable at your event, and why.
Yes.
The National Trust has a deserved reputation that it is now, for 3.5 years, 4 years, trying to change. Sincerely, genuinely change.
Really?
Oh, definitely. They are.
Okay.
But they've had a century of what they have now. 50 years, right? Yes. So you can't turn that around in 3 or 4 years because these folks have felt extremely comfortable in your properties, on your walks, and you've known that.
Yes.
The outreach hasn't been there. So I don't think that people necessarily, let's take Cup Match. You know where Cup Match is?
Yes.
If you pay, you can go. Why is it that when white folks come, they're generally in their corporate tent? Right? They're not spreading amongst camps.
Right.
Okay? So even at Cup Match, it's not for the mingle, it's not for the event, right? Because they're not in.
Yes.
But that's society. I'm unlikely to be on the beach at Elbow on Christmas.
Yes.
I do not go to the rugby classic, right? Now, rugby is a sport for everybody.
Yes.
Golf is a sport for everybody. Sailing is a sport for everybody.
Yes.
It's the country, right? And how we've gotten here.
Yes.
Right? Our 500% man, if he knew why he has any view of anything, right? If you accept that you were the enemy of the state, then you know unless you bent over here or thought like them, you were the enemy of the state. And so because I'm aware of that, I might still have the same thought of when I've been colonized and brainwashed. I might still have the same thought. Hey, it's raining. I need a raincoat. Yeah. That's not about empowerment. Right? That's about common sense.
It's true.
But on other things, I might feel the way I feel merely because somebody's made me think that with a steady diet.
Yes.
There is a book, Richard, Native Son, written by Richard Wright. That book, I wish there's a quote from that book that I have kept with me for years. And if you understand this quote in this book, then I think you'd understand, someone might understand how when I say I'm matching energy, what I'm actually matching. Listen, and you know when I realized I'm still traumatized?
Really?
Oh, sure. You know how I realized it?
How's that?
If I'm traveling east or west in my car, and a police car is going the other direction, I look at my rearview mirror. Yes. I'm a citizen. I'm no gangster. I'm not a person of interest. I'm not helping anybody with any inquiries. And yet, it's instant. That's trauma. That's having too many British cops pull me over for no reason. That's sorry, I didn't mean to go personal. I'm sorry.
It lives on from the day.
I'm just saying, maybe I'm the only one who still does it, but I'm telling you, me.
But then you hear of cases where you're more likely to be pulled over if you're black.
Oh, I know people get pulled over in this country under the stop and search.
Right.
And it was only because they're black. Right. The car was so old and slow. The person doesn't speed. So why are you pulling that person over? Right. I knew somebody who lived in town. Going home, he got stopped twice in a night. Just going home. Here's the quote. Every movement of his body is an unconscious protest. Every desire, every dream, no matter how intimate or personal, is a plot or a conspiracy. Every hope is a plan for insurrection. Every glance of his eye is a threat. His very existence is a crime against the state. That's how it used to be.
Yes.
Okay, so this is what I would like to get into. Cayman, I was not sure about saying this on here, but I'm going to go for it. If somebody was to Google Cayman's government, they would find that I'd be probably the second darkest person in this cabinet. And I'm nowhere near, okay? Right. And the point I'm making is they might have even heard, our listeners might have even heard those speeches and visualized a certain demographic.
Right.
They be incorrect. Very much so.
Yes.
Okay? And so I really want to disavow anybody of that idea that they were just saying Caymanian but meant black. That they were in the house saying that we know Caymanians are held back and really just were afraid to say black Caymanian. No. It was all on.
Yes.
So when I consider Bermuda and Cayman, I think about the values long before internet. Well, let me just say, AIG had been here since what, 85 or 80, AIG has been on the hill for a very, I want to say 79, maybe 82, maybe longer, but a while. Okay. And they didn't, as far as I'm aware, create inequality in this country.
Right.
But equally, I'm pretty sure they were here for the general strike.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm pretty sure Bermudian staff at AIG heard of Artie Simmons, knew of E.F. Gordon and Freddie Wade, right? That would have known about Brown Evans and fearlessness. And perhaps, just perhaps, they actually also saw John Swan walking a very tight rope between commerce and community.
Yeah.
Walk a tightrope. And so, as for all we know, when people came to Bermuda, when they consider what the society was, they, whatever. And I can't finish that sentence.
Right.
Okay? So it could very well be that everything that happened outside of international business and the fights that we held, the progress that we had to fight for, has made international business leaders understand these people have a line. You can get the government to take us over the line, but don't you go over that line. And so if they give the correct argument to the government, you get Bermudians getting 18 jobs, foreigners getting 560 jobs, and not one peep from a politician. If we brought in to Bermuda on this show, let's say we brought in one of these Caymanian MPs and we gave them the Bermudian data.
Oh, wow.
What do you think they'd say to us?
We used to be like that.
The good old days?
Yeah.
I remember when we had these arguments. Man, what I do?
It's the truth.
Man, I'm arguing with you. Because there's been no intervention from the government. So I have nothing to balance this against.
Right.
So the very balance we're looking for, that international businesses are looking for. Like I said, we're not idiots.
Right.
We'd probably give them all that they want, because if they understand who we are as a country, as a people, that Bermudians are proud, then they probably won't push it. But, and let me just say this, if our political leaders wither in those negotiations, if the political leaders say, no, just do what you want. They ain't even reading the paper. They don't even read the paper. They don't even, they won't even, they don't care. If that's what's happening, we have been sold out.
Yes, it's true.
And so all I can repeat again is 18 to 560, and there was not delivered as bad news.
Yeah.
No bad news. Very particular plans, even convincing PRCs that you will have the same rights as Bermudians, other than the right to vote. Well, who wants a right to vote? This is what you get. Sorry, that was getting rude. Let me just, all I'm getting at is, you think that matters to them?
Nope.
And there's no, we think another 200 PRCs would do it, or 2,000, right? It's just open-ended. Well, what do you think happened in Cayman? There was nobody who said, hey, we've had 600.
Yes.
Hey, we are at an 18% increase on last year of number of work permits. They just kept going and going and going through 2021, 2022, 2023, and then 2024. They're like, oh man, 2025, a white paper.
Yes.
December 2025, legislation, March, enforcement.
Yeah.
Less than a year to put the solutions in place, or the tools in place.
Yes.
It only took 3 years for them to end up as a minority. So, a couple of things. A, we aren't that desperate.
Right.
Meaning, what could we lose? What was Cayman going to lose?
Exactly.
But if, as I said this before, if they panicked because of COVID, if they all believe, you want to go back to fishing and farming?
Right.
And then open the floodgates, we will never be in this situation again.
Yeah.
Worried about our economy and our population. No, sir. And so, floodgates.
Yeah.
Here we are. So I think the Bermudian standards and our values, even outside of commerce,
Right.
even outside of international business, even outside of the official formal union representation and the formal political parties, I think just who we are. Right? And I read something from Wayne Smith, who is at ABIC. And I would imagine that this was going in writing, right? So it's not even something that you could say in a room and think, yeah, once I say this, they'll forget it. Right? And Wayne made it very, very clear that in his mind, international business has to work for a business and Bermudians. Right? He was very plain. Very, very plain.
Yes.
I should also say there's, he concludes his column here. ABIC takes its place in Bermuda seriously. We recognize the challenges ahead and embrace our role as solutions-oriented partner. Whether advocating for smart tax policy, talent development, or cost competitiveness, our mission is clear: to help build a Bermuda where international companies thrive, and so do Bermudians.
There you go.
Now, he may sell us out in meetings. I doubt it. I don't.
Yeah.
Right? I don't think he would.
Right.
I should also say that the BDA is the concierge. So the BDA, Bermuda Development Agency, they are the ones who kind of introduced that international company. They travel to say, hey, you want to incorporate your companies in Bermuda? You should do that stuff. And that's headed by Candery Burgess. So do I need to give the demographics of Candery and Wayne?
No, you don't.
Okay, great. So my point is, whoever is coming to Bermuda, whoever's in Bermuda, if they need to liaise with regulators, with society, with charities, there are two black Bermudians in as much as your demographic more than your soul matters, right? At least they're there.
Yeah.
And so that part I want to deal with. Now, I also said yesterday that there's some good news. We had a caller yesterday, I guess I could say his name, he said it, Ralph Commission, and he was querying about the level of black Bermudian employment in IB.
Right.
And I read it out from a document. I'm going to read a little bit from that document today because I do think it is important, but I have a question for you.
Yes.
I'm going to read a roundtable discussion, okay? There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people, 8 people, 7 people, sorry, at this roundtable.
Okay.
There are things that I've highlighted that I think is good for us and our listeners to hear.
Right.
I need to know from you whether you need to know if what I'm saying is being said by a man or a woman.
Okay.
And whether you need to know if the person is black or white.
Okay. That's difficult.
No, well, I'm just saying you may not need to know.
Right.
Because just of what's been said.
Okay.
So I'm going to go through. So this was March 2024. And in attendance, I'll give you the names and their titles because it's all here. Kirsten Beasley, Head of Office, Willis Towers Watson. Deshae Keynes, Colleague Engagement Leader, Marsh McLennan, Bermuda. And she's Head of Education at ACRE. ACRE is the Association for Corporate Racial Equality. So it's the representative body in IB that's trying to bring about racial equality. Got me?
Got you.
Okay, and she's the, head of education. Tracy Gibbons, head of QBE Re. Lloyd Holder, Chief Information Security Officer at the Sirius Point, Bermuda. Marlon Williams, Senior Underwriter at Hiscox Re and ILS. He's the co-chair of ACRE.
Okay.
Javon Williams, General Counsel, Chubb, Bermuda. And Suzanne Williams-Charles, Director of Policy and Regulation at ABER. And they were moderated by Bill Zuhl, who's the former editor of the Royal Gazette. I think he's actually returned.
Yes.
Right, Bill Zuhl. Okay? And so the first question is, why is diversity, equality, and inclusion so important to the Bermuda reinsurance industry? So this is about DEI, diversity, equality, and inclusion. Do you know what that is, or should I make the assumption?
Oh, not just for me, but for the listening audience.
Explain.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I said should I make the assumption? Okay.
Yeah.
So diversity, equality, and inclusion is a sort of corporate thing that they're actually moving away from to ESG, and then they're going to water that down some more. But basically, DEI, a lot of companies came out with this sort of diversity, equality, and inclusion, where either they wanted policies of DEI in their business so that you knew if you were diverse from the company, which always seems to mean non-white,
Right.
that you will be and can be promoted and have everything else, salaries, whatever, benefits, equal to your colleagues who, I suppose, are historically privileged. Equality is, again, everybody getting the same, and a lot of times you will hear that one for gender pay.
Yes.
Men and women being paid the same. And then inclusion, those are the sorts of things where it's a bit about human rights and a bit about common sense. So if there's a team building exercise and it's at a bar and some people don't drink or they can't even be around alcohol, that's not inclusive.
Right. Okay.
If you don't have a ramp getting into your place,
Yes.
then people will be able to, so those kinds of things, right? DEI. So the question is, why is it so important to the Bermuda reinsurance industry? So I'm going to read answers, but if you want to know who said it, let me know. Well, that's what I'm saying. You let me know. I don't think it's...
You want me to tell you who it was? If it's a woman or a man, or if they're black and white?
I wasn't going to do that, but I don't think you can do...
I thought you mentioned it.
No, I was saying, I'm going to read some stuff.
Okay.
If you want to know who said it,
Okay,
whether a man or a woman, or if the person's black or white, then ask me.
Okay.
But if not, I wasn't going to say it.
Okay.
But if you want to guess, we can do that too.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to get any of them right.
Okay.
I'm serious. But we'll go for the first one then. Okay, so to the question of why is DEI so important, here's the first answer. Because of the composition and size of the Bermuda population, because of this composition and size of the Bermuda population, we are unable to sustain the marketplace just from the Bermuda community. It has been that way for several years. The population can support the activity in the international business sector. To be able to attract the best talent in the island, to keep our business center alive, you need to have an environment that welcomes all people. It is vitally important for us to create an environment where people feel comfortable coming to the island, and when they get here, they feel welcomed. Second question? When I think about why it's so important, I think about our youth and the population of Bermuda, those who are coming up behind us. It's essential for them to be able to see themselves, those of similar backgrounds and from similar communities, represented within international business. As the first speaker said, is the largest economic pillar and driver for our jurisdiction. And I'm specifically speaking of black Bermudian and female representation, two demographic profiles which are of utmost importance for me personally. Do you want to guess anything? I just keep reading, or do you want to jump in? Cool. No. I like this. If you don't mind, I'll keep reading, but jump in. If you don't jump in, I'm going to keep going.
Okay.
All right. Just so you know, so far I've read one woman and one man.
Okay. I did figure that out.
Did you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which one was which?
The first one was a woman and the second one was a man.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Our industry does not reflect the diversity of our population. We ignore that at our peril because it's perpetuating the economic divide, and that is not sustainable. We need to up our game because this is going to be a huge problem for our society. We already see that. It is only going to be exacerbated if we can't change our mindset. Keep going?
Keep going.
Next person. That was one person, right?
Okay.
Another person. With international business being the economic driver, some individuals are able to carve out a really good life for themselves and generate significant wealth. And you can see how that wealth is distributed in a place as small as Bermuda. We proceed on this path at our peril. Our spending patterns are very different. Where I will go on the weekend and what local businesses get the proceeds of the gains I've earned in international business look very different from other people's activities. We have a very important role to play, not just in who gets that wealth, but how that wealth is distributed island-wide. We have to think about what's sustainable and what sustainability looks like in Bermuda. Okay. Next one. Mm-hmm. One key theme I want to emphasize is the unique impact that Bermuda's size has on this conversation. Because of our size, disparities of access within our industry impact the community in an amplified way. Many of us who grew up in Bermuda have experienced firsthand the subtle but pervasive effect of the socioeconomic differences without realizing the full extent of these disparities. And these disparities, as, well, it's called by names, but as a man and a woman above, so rightly point out, are not solely economic. They also affect access to education, housing, healthcare, and job opportunities. This imbalance and lack of access creates very real social, economic, medical, and every other measurement that you can possibly have disparities within our community. Would you like to know anything about that person?
Yeah. I know one you read, I think the first one, going back, was a white woman.
No.
Okay. And the second one was a black man.
Yes.
Okay.
The one I just okay.
Well, the one, okay.
No, you're right. Everything, those are two. Okay. So I just finished one, healthcare, the imbalance, right, and discrepancies create very real social, economic, and medical, and every other measurement you can possibly have disparities within the community. This next one's a little wrong. DEI is tied to the development of Bermuda. At a higher level, the DEI initiative seems to be an in vogue thing to do and talk about in various sectors in and around the world, but specifically as it relates to Bermuda, because of our lack of separation and because of the fact that we have such a close-knit community, an enhancement in our DEI profile in Bermuda is directly related to the enhancement of our entire society. So it elevates the importance of the discussion. What he's saying is our society is so is so diverse that DEI being effective in IB will automatically create the DEI in the country, or will reflect the DEI, to your point about that mingling and the social, right? So if you got, I don't know, I don't want to say it this way, but say a Delwood graduate sitting next to a BHS graduate in IB, perhaps they'll see themselves as Bermudian. Those two same people sitting in the civil service might see themselves as BHS and Delwood.
Right, got you. I got you.
I would like to think. Anyway. Next one. I wanted to jump on the point about the uniqueness of our jurisdiction and discuss another category of DEI, which is the guest worker and Bermudian. The disparity in the economic wealth of those working in international business versus those in other sectors in Bermuda, and also that concept that Bermudians might not have a place in international business, has created a divide. I've spent the last couple of years at ABIR, I'll say it, trying to figure out how we can convince the general public that there can be a place for them. It has been quite difficult. I suspect is because they don't always see that they don't always see that being represented. Even though those comments are made, it's important that we, to Tracy's point, create an industry that looks like the community.
Okay.
That means DEI looks different in every country, right? You shouldn't expect your workforce to look like a certain thing if your community doesn't look that way. That's the progress we need to make, because the disparity or the sentiment that some of the public feel about the international business community does not help us grow. And it's a vital sector.
Yeah.
Would you like to know who said that? Or you can probably guess, right?
No.
Ah.
Who's that?
That was a black woman.
Okay.
Okay. But that was the part. You shouldn't expect your workforce to look a certain thing if your community doesn't look that way. I mean, that's straightforward.
Yeah.
You know, I'll just drop in here and say something, because I've done a lot of work in human rights, fighting racism. One of the things, and if any employees are listening here or any employers are listening, then get nervous, because hopefully your employees are about to take my advice. Google OHRC. What you're looking for is the Ontario Human Rights Commission. And the Ontario Human Rights Commission is their act is what Bermuda's Human Rights Act 1981 is based on. The difference is that the Ontario Human Rights Commission acts like legal aid. So in this country, if you feel you've been racially abused, only in recent years has the Human Rights Commission brought on a legal representative. But there, it's like the prosecutions here, DPP.
Yes.
The Human Rights Commission takes the case. So it's not your pocket against the very wealthy human rights abusers' pocket, right? It's the state. You've abused the human rights of an Ontarian.
Right.
What coming for you? If you go there on the OHRC, I think it's CA, they have resources, publications, all sorts.
Yes.
I haven't been on there in probably 25 years, so I'm assuming the address is still the same. Okay?
Yes.
But one of the things that, because I keep seeing this here, and I thought I would address it, glass ceilings. Okay? So there are many, many Bermudians who work in companies where the promotions are open and fair.
Yes.
Even if they're not open, they're fair. Even if they're closed, they may be fair, or they may be open and closed, right? Right? All sorts. However, this is the part. If you work in a company in Bermuda, and the senior management and the board are all white, or let's say non-black, but the staff, up until that SVP, are very diverse. You ever wonder how that happens?
How does that happen?
That's called the glass ceiling.
Okay.
That's what was happening to Canadians. Okay? It doesn't happen. It happens here, but ACRE is going to have to address that because it's not out here for us to address.
So that means that they only go so far.
Yes, but how that happens is the mechanism why I was showing people to go to their website and they can read it for themselves.
Yes.
Here's how it goes. In a company of merit, right, where there is no hanky-panky going on in terms of nepotism or race.
Gotcha.
So you're not an insurance company of an old Bermuda family, as an example.
Yes.
You aren't a wholesaler of, say, Pepsi.
Okay.
You do not have your child on your board in your construction company. If there's no hanky-panky, then on merit, people would be promoted to the echelon that they best fit.
Got you.
If no hanky-panky. Here's what happens. When you ever see a business that has a very diverse, even up to almost senior management, but then the senior vice presidents and board are all homogenous, we'll use that word, it's because they advertise for those posts rather than promote.
Yes.
And when you advertise, you get to handpick the look you want.
Yes.
And that's why you may be sitting right now in a job in Bermuda, having applied for this job 4 times. Each time they've given you some kind of little, not quite rationale. And for some reason, there always seems to be this demographic who fits. Even this one who came from a competitor and got fired, and they still hired this one.
Yes.
That's how it happens. And so, let me be polite. I would just say that that's even at an international company. Imagine a local insurance company where the whole board, they just haven't met any black Bermudians, I'm sure. In any event, so Bermudian companies, okay, not Bermudian companies NIB, local, don't have a workforce or executive board membership that looks like the society in which they're founded. Let's go on. The next one. The insurance and reinsurance industry have established a significant presence in Bermuda for over 3 decades. However, the broader community of Bermuda often perceives it as an aspiration that may not be achievable within their lifetimes. Consequently, prioritizing DEI becomes crucial for Bermuda. The representation we aim to achieve on the island will play a pivotal role in reshaping the industry's landscape over the next 5 to 15 years. Continuing on the current trajectory without making DEI a central and driving force in Bermuda will only perpetuate the ongoing discussions and maintain the cycle that has persisted for more than 3 decades. The importance of DEI goes beyond necessity. It is fundamentally the right thing to do. DEI has the potential to enhance our cultural understanding and profoundly impact our communities and corporate social responsibility initiatives. It signifies a departure from traditional practices of the past decade. It encourages individuals to reconnect with meaningful charities from their upbringing, fostering greater diversity in the transition of people into the industry. By extending DEI efforts to grassroots levels, hello, Willie.
I'm here.
Such as involvement in football clubs and ballet studios, we enable young Bermudians to witness successful individuals within the industry representing diverse backgrounds. This exposure not only encourages aspirations, but also has the potential to reshape the entire landscape of Bermuda over the next 5 to 15 years. The next question is more an industry-based one, so I'm going to skip through it a little bit. How can a more diverse workforce and senior leadership help these businesses to be successful? Okay, so how will DEI make businesses more successful? So the first answer, we need to reshape the notion of what a team player is. When I first came into the industry, the term implied conformity. But a team player in a diverse context brings an important asset, an alternative perspective that challenges.
I was going to say that.
Go along, say it, my brother.
Yeah, perspective.
Yeah. So then the person, this is a woman speaking.
Right.
Speaking from a personal experience, voicing dissent in a professional setting as a woman still carries significant personal cost.
Yes.
A burden that I suspect is even more substantial for people of color in similar circumstances, similar positions.
Yes.
The core of our business case rests on effectively embracing diversity, and I believe we are far from reaching that ideal. Hey, I said this is good news.
Yes.
Okay, and it sounds like I haven't read any good news yet, right? What I'm getting at is if the industry was created without an acre, right, without any real concern about, I mean, the UBP government started CURE, the Commission for Unity and Racial Equality, and they had CURE reports. We had to put in the amount of the demographics of your staff, and they'll look to see who's black, who's white, you know, all of that stuff. So what I'm getting at, these are people frontline, if there was, risking their career to talk about diversity. And the diversity, not just saying you're not hiring enough of us.
Yes.
Bermudian, right? I'm going to get into it a bit more, but what I'm saying, I think this is good news. We know Cayman represents our apocalypse, right? But if we're at 63,000 and they got to 88,000 really quick, right? We have to be vigilant, maybe hyper vigilant, because we saw it only took 1 calendar year, 2021 to 2022, and our government and opposition just say we want to half the thing. They even said we think Bermuda can carry 300 PRCs,
Yes.
1,300 PRCs, 3,000 PRCs, given the birth rate. And so
Yes.
if the population rate is this by 2030, we'll have to this, that, or this. There's none of that. Right, because that would take leadership.
Yes.
That would, I said many times on the show, they're not politicians and they're not leaders. Okay? And we're facing, well, you called it, Jurassic Park.
Yes, we are.
Okay. Next one. We're definitely not there yet. The case for diversity has been made. There are consistent studies on it. The business case has been proven in terms of having gender and racial diversity, not just in the company, but at executive levels. I want to read this sentence out, and I'm going to take some time. Listen to this. The irony for me, with respect to our industry, is that we make a business based on recognizing that diverse portfolios build resilience in our money making. It's foolhardy to put all our eggs in one basket. What is saying, right? So when you do investments, right, when people had their pensions, they would say you want a mixed portfolio, right?
Yeah.
You want some high risk, high yield stuff, and then some low risk, high yield, medium yield, right? So what Mr. Williams here is saying is that the irony is that the business models require diverse investments, diverse products, diverse portfolios. We would never put all our eggs in one basket in our business sense, but look who we hire. Right?
Mercy.
He says, what we're trying to achieve, and we recognize it in reinsurance, insurance, banking, hedge fund, all of investment is built on this premise, right? The diversity of investment, right? And the same intelligent minds who recognize the benefits that diversity brings ignore it with respect to the selection of people and how it builds a company.
Yes.
I think that is such a brilliant point. Diversity is built into their business models.
Yes.
And they dump that as a success strategy when you go to hire people.
So true.
I think that is such a brilliant point. We'll build something largely homogenous in a company and then have that homogenous group try to build something diversified financially. It's an irony that sticks out to me in our space. I think that's brilliant. Where are we? I can squeeze this one, I think. Nope, I'm going to keep going to the highlighted ones. The genesis of diversity and inclusion came from a racial perspective. There has been some talk about LGBTQ and women and mental neurodivergent. So diversity. So this, I skipped through that stuff because we were talking about something quite broad rather than as niche as that stuff.
Right.
The genesis of diversity and inclusion came from a racial perspective. It also came from the perspective of racial discrimination as well as gender discrimination against women. Historically, black and brown people as well as women have always had to overprove their qualifications. We've always had to be overeducated, and I'm talking about this from a person of color perspective as well as a female perspective. All the additional qualifications we must have. We are always 2 to 5 steps ahead of our peer groups from a racial perspective. We have all this data about how diverse organizations are more profitable, but because this started from a racial and gender perspective, we're going to be in a constant state of having to prove repeatedly that I'm good enough, I'm worthy, all these things through education and exams in whatever industry that you're in to be at the top of your game. The another one has a report with him, and he says, I want to note a data point from the 2022 employment survey that underpins some of what we discussed earlier. While the majority of Bermudians are black, only 31 and 11% of employees in international business represent black men and black women respectively.
Wow.
That is absurd if you think about it. Relating that back to our current discussion, you must have knowledge and experience transfer to young professionals coming up after us, and not just within the school system. You heard that, right? Not just with, okay?
Yeah.
That's what makes the work of ACRE so important. What Suzanne experienced in terms of assistance and support isn't a rare occasion, but becomes the expected standard. I skipped over that. And this was Suzanne William Charles speaking about the support that she got in IB that got her where she was. Let me say also, I first got back to Bermuda at 22. I was also told IB is where to go. I was privileged enough, and I don't know if this still happens, but if this doesn't happen currently, I like to give it to Acre and anyone else. What happened really was someone who thought I was somebody who should be in IB called me up or called my dad or someone, and I went to go see him and had a chat, right? It was a chat over coffee. Back then I used to drink Earl Grey tea. Okay. Right? So it was a chat over tea.
Right.
Okay? And this person told me about underwriting, right?
Okay.
And then they said, listen, hold a minute, I want to make a call. And they called someone and said, I got a young man here. I need him, you need to talk to him. He needs to talk to you, learn about what you do.
Yes.
So I went to that person. And that person was a broker. And he explained to me the brokerage world in Bermuda, the people who put insurance companies in touch with reinsurance companies.
Okay.
And he explained to me what that was. And then he said, hold on, I know somebody. So what I'm trying to get at is men, they were all men.
Right.
Black men sort of took me in a bit and showed me around.
Yes.
About how the industry works. And maybe it was something, two things. I don't like money enough and I don't like numbers enough. So it didn't quite, but the one guy who's a broker, he's still active in the industry today. And I remembered, I was young, right? So I think it's maybe 10 years between us. It feels like 10, but it might not be that much.
Right.
But the guy was trying to tell me how he was changing his job because he didn't like his job anymore. Staying within IB, but getting out of that role.
Right.
Really. I want you to understand. This fella wasn't 40.
Right.
Right? And I wasn't 30.
Right.
In fact, I wasn't 25. And imagine, I'm in his office, right? Eyeing his heavy gold link bracelet. Because my father had really expensive stuff. Like he and my brother got nice taste. You can see me, right? I got a face for radio, right? I'll be cleaned up tomorrow, really. But he said, man, I'm tired of it. I got to change up. It's not good.
Right.
I said, what you mean? He goes, look, man, no, honestly, like every maitre d' in Bermuda knows me. I said, really? Remember Romanovs?
Yes.
Okay. He was telling me his board Romanov. Now, you know the level.
Yes.
Okay. He said, I keep my passport here. Look behind my door. He had 2 suits hanging up. Shirts, suits, shoes, everything, right?
Yes.
He has to travel so much and entertain so much that he wanted a better life or a different. And I'm looking at him going, they pay you to do this? And you, what? And he said he wanted to marry his girlfriend and have a life. And as far as I can tell, he did that when I see him today.
Yes.
I don't even know if he remembers that moment, but it stood out to me because, again, older black men were taking some time out to show me something.
Yes.
And in our country, I talk about Charles Ford Clausen telling me, taking me, right? My dad was, right. So, let me get back to this. Is the real issue, this is the next question, is the real issue that there is no momentum for change? Here's the comment. The industry is in a funny place right now with respect to diversity, because to Deshay's point, black people have been fighting for inclusion for a very long time. And this movement of DEI comes out of a racial struggle that's been going on since slavery. So it's a continuing conversation for us. It's not different for the most part, but when we say diversity in a corporate setting, it's an umbrella term which could mean a variety of different things. I agree that there are lots of forms of diversity, but the industry has pivoted to other forms of diversity that are more familiar. It has pivoted to those forms of diversity that are less prickly and easier to swallow. It does what it's comfortable with. What ends up happening is, as a black person, when someone says, can we acknowledge that the industry has made progress? We can acknowledge that, yes, the industry has made progress. But we can't do it without acknowledging that the areas in which the industry has made progress are asymmetrical and lopsided. As a black person, while you have to acknowledge that there has been progress, because there has, it's still not enough. It depends on what bucket of diversity we're talking about. Talking about racial diversity, the industry hasn't done a whole lot. When you look at the statistic that 31% of the industry is made up of black women, and how many of those black women are in executive roles, I think the number is 3%. Most of the total is skewed towards the lower ranks. When you contemplate that black Bermudian women make up the largest percentage of all degree holders in Bermuda, the question is that justifiable? It's not. Can I steal them in?
Mm-hmm.
That point about the degree holders, right?
Right.
I don't think that part, that's something I've had to look at over the years, right, for different reasons and different things.
Right.
But there was a time when I would, since 2017, when I was trying to talk to some influential people, not me, big people,
right,
about who does international business compete with for top managers. And I thought about the amount of public officers and civil servants who have degrees, and their experience, their eye for detail, their fastidiousness, the policy that would make them very good in IB.
Okay.
I honestly think that.
Right.
Right. And so it got me thinking, say, how many black Bermudian women with masters are just in the education ministry? Just the education ministry.
Yeah.
Okay. And not teachers. Include teachers then.
Right.
But my point is, with the administration of education being about X amount of schools and X amount of students, there's a lot of professional expertise locked in at the ministry. I think there's a lot of academic qualification that I think could be out there. Now, you're going to say, well, you believe me, listen to this one. If you go on ABEAR's site right now, they have a free online course for, I think it's 14 weeks to learn about the industry.
Oh, wow.
For if you just want to learn about it, it's a free online course. Or if you want to learn about it and take some stuff so that you can transition to a job in IB, this course is also what they're saying you could take. Now, 14 Mondays is an investment, right? And I would think ABEAR is saying if you stick it out for 14, we're going to hire you no matter what, because you clearly wanted it. 14 is a lot of Mondays, right? It's 1 day a week, right? But I saw this, okay? And remember, I was talking about the signature school. I didn't see one that to feed that pillar of our economy.
Yes, that's true.
So, to Mr. Williams' point just now, the academics are there, right? The black Bermudian women have the most degrees in the island, and represented in the administrative level in IB. That's what he was saying. That it's skewed to the lower ranks because only 3% of their number is at executive level. Just saying. To continue, right, it's a real issue that there's no momentum for change. I read this one out yesterday where the woman, a recruiter, said, oh, good for you for getting your education and getting in the industry. And she says, Bermudians are highly educated. What are you talking about? And she went on, right? But this was a white Bermudian woman saying that she was discriminated against because of being Bermudian. Okay. We go on from the viewpoint of expat guest workers coming to Bermuda. This is someone I really want to say she gets some credit for it. Let me just say, I think all of these folks, remember people would say, but you guys are saying that on here? And one day I said, listen, if you think that I'm bold reading what people have done, they won. Because look what they did. And I'm just talking about what they've done. And how could I be in trouble given what they have actually done? But I get it now after reading this report. Okay? Because these lot are saying some things that are bold. Well, I'd say bold, but to them, that's factual. They live it every day. They see it in the boardrooms. They see it in the coffee rooms. They see it when they travel for conferences. So for them, like, Corey, it is what it is. I agree it is what it is. I'm just saying, you're telling us. Right? So no, I get it. So let me just go on. She says, from the viewpoint of expat guest workers coming to Bermuda, it represents a highly significant opportunity. Working in Bermuda is often considered the pinnacle of one's career, often offering remarkable prospects. As a Bermudian working within the industry, there is recognition that a well-rounded career often requires international experience beyond Bermuda shores. However, on a broader global scale within the insurance industry, Bermuda stands out as the destination of choice for individuals seeking valuable experience and opportunities. Suzanne at Aber says that has changed over time. I can remember at the beginning of my career, people still thought that in order to understand reinsurance, you had to leave Bermuda and work somewhere else. And then they go on. We come down again. Talking about data. Yes, data is very important, and our industry lags behind on the collection of these kinds of data. Quantitative data needs improvement to ensure it does not have blind spots in it. But I'm of the view that the qualitative data should not be discounted. ACRE has been fortunate enough to be hosted by ABIC, and we've had close roundtable discussions where it's a safe space to say whatever you think. Those conversations have been fruitful. We found ourselves in a catch-22 situation in the early days of our formation because we had a lot of qualitative data from people's lived experiences. Those experiences are very similar across racial groups, gender groups, and across companies. It was pretty powerful to be able to present that. And what was said was, oh well, the stories are great, but we need quantitative data. So we partnered up with the Department of Statistics, and the exercise of pulling together all this data, we got as granular as we could without revealing certain individuals in the data, because the numbers were so sparse that we knew who these 3 individuals were in senior management because there weren't enough numbers there to ensure anonymity. So let's say you want to know how many black SVPs there are in the top 5 reinsurers in the country. If it's 3, you know, that's your boy, that's your girl, that's your girl. To use the data, and in this work, anonymity is really important, because a lot of times if someone is intentionally oppressing you or suppressing a whole demographic, the name is going to give them the excuse. Oh, well, that person only got this, right? That person, no, you don't understand. They're problematic when it comes to women, or you. I see where you're going there, but I'll have to talk to HR to see if I can tell you what's really going on with that one. You know, a lot of that comes out. So the anonymity in that industry, I would imagine, is quite important. Okay. So could the data be better? Absolutely. But do we have enough data right now to be able to move things forward? For sure. I think that the people who are inclined to do so, many of whom are on this call, are doing it regardless of the imperfect data. The industry has enough to do something different. It's a willingness to do something different in this space that's lacking. Sometimes that happens at the CEO level, sometimes through the hiring managers. But what I do think will make a difference in our space is embedding accountability around some of those things we want to see with respect to diversity in our industry, and we have accountability for every other metric. I'm going to leave it here on this. Sorry, let me just finish up with this one. They're talking about hiring Bermudians, and they're very, very strong. The last point I'll make is what I've seen in Bermuda that works well is where the CEO has a vision and the HR manager is empowered to execute that vision and hold hiring managers accountable. That has worked very well. Listen to this, Billy. And I know about this. This has actually happened to me in the fall. We get WhatsApp messages or phone calls from an HR manager who says she's looking for a dynamic black Bermudian at such and such a level to do X, and we source that talent. We absorb some of that talent from the network that's been built. We give them coaching and they go in and have those one-on-one conversations. The needle is moving in some of those areas. There hasn't been no progress, but progress is slow. I'm at a position where slow progress is better than no progress, and we will continue pushing this so we can see more progress made. Remember the underground economy for the slaves?
Yes.
Underground HR for your IB. No, I had this. Let me tell you, this fall, I got a WhatsApp. Corey, do you know a young Bermudian, hopefully male, because I want to hire a male, who is interested? I don't care what their degree is. Okay? And you get those from time to time. It's almost like they're sneaking out the message, right? Right? And let me tell you, if anybody wants to help people who do that, let me be very clear with you. I'm glad there's an acre now.
Right.
Because oftentimes I'm not bragging about this, right? But there are times when I can give someone the opportunity to, like somebody has told me there's an opportunity over there. Right? The key that we can do is direct them to the door. We might even unlock and open the door.
Yes.
But I have never answered questions for them. I have never lied about somebody's qualifications, because nepotism and that corruption is what puts you in there, and you don't have to work for it. You're so-and-so's cousin. You're so-and-so's brother.
Yes.
No. You still have to perform if I recommend you.
Well, talent.
I have written a ton of references for people. A ton. And let me tell you. And those, I think I write good references. But I assure you, the people who've asked me for them know that they could ask.
Yes.
And the people who received them were like, oh, wow. Okay, because I don't play. I'm going to end this. I also want to echo Deshay's emphasis on localization. It's crucial that any initiatives within Bermuda are implemented with a deep understanding of our unique history, social context, and dynamics. Overlooking these aspects could lead to unintended negative consequences. Therefore, incorporating feedback from diverse Bermudian voices who deeply understand these dynamics and our ecosystem is essential for successful implementation. At an individual level, I do a number of things which help keep me grounded and informed about the real stresses within the industry. I try to meet with as many career changers as possible. These interactions aid their transition into the industry and refine my perspective on how the industry is perceived externally. I believe it's important for leaders to maintain this connection to our community, facilitate networking, and improve accessibility to our industry. Lastly, I urge companies hiring in Bermuda to partner with recruiters that have a strong local network. Several recruiters have a presence and regular operations here with a deep understanding of the Bermudian talent landscape. Their insights are invaluable, especially as more organizations establish themselves in Bermuda, aiming to hire local talent and build sustainable, resilient companies. I wanted to do that, and I called it good news, even though we heard there's a lot of room for improvement. But contrast that roundtable of all Bermudian executives who work in IB with MPs and ministers having to argue in their House of Parliament in Cayman about the nobility and dignity of Caymanians.
Yes.
This is why I said earlier, I believe it's our standard and values beyond even IB that impacts IB. So those people sitting around that table, 2 black women, 2 black men, 2 white women.
Yes.
Okay? My guess is no white men were invited, and why would they be, given that's the standard that you're trying to knock down? You're looking for DEI against white and male, right? So I get it. And the women, white women, black men, all had stories and all are working in DEI. What I read to you is actually in a magazine. Okay? That's in a newsletter that came out in 2024.
Yeah.
did you hear anybody stumble?
No.
There was no stuttering.
No.
This is good.
You know what I liked about it? I liked the fact that it was honest. You know, people, basically Bermudians pouring out their heart as to what they know happens and what they would like to see in the industry. And I can appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it's a start.
Like I said, you have Canterbury purchased at the BDA.
Mm-hmm.
Wayne Smith at ABIC.
Yes.
Okay, now granted, we also have the guy from ABIC bragging about work permit and stuff. So
Yes.
mm-hmm. Okay, but we got them here.
Yes.
We have ACRE that is formed within the industry of industry staff and employees to ensure as much as possible policies or even the preparedness of young black Bermudians entering the industry, right? They have some mentors to look up to, right? And I think maybe more than anything else, maintaining, because there's something, that I wanted to deal with. It didn't come up there. I can do this very quickly. There's something called code switching. Okay. And code switching didn't come up in this conversation, or at least I didn't read it. But code switching is this. So you and I, right, we're talking now, and we know there are listeners, right?
Right.
And I'm speaking right now the way I will when I'm off here.
Right.
You sound exactly when we're talking on the phone as you do right now.
Right.
However, there are some Bermudians who feel that they must discard their accent, right, when they go into those places. I can't even do an American accent, right? I can't. I was going to try, but I can't, right? And so they will change up.
Yes.
Okay. And that's called code switching, right?
Okay.
It's something that comes out of race relations, and it's something that's done. Like, I had a roommate in college, right? He had so I won't say, I won't out him like that, but I only called him by his nickname.
Okay.
Everybody did. That was his nickname.
Yes.
Okay. Now, his straight name, right? Like the name that his mother would call him, right? Would be, we'll say, Frank. Okay.
Right.
My man came back to Bermuda.
Right.
I had to call him at his office. And this is how it went. Hi, Bill speaking. I was like, I'm sorry, I think I have the wrong number. But he got my voice.
Yes.
And guess what? I went, Corey? And I was like, bro, that was you just now? In other words, the name that his mother called him was still like his middle name.
Okay.
He didn't even use that name. He used the birth certificate name. And then an abbreviation of that. Right? So let's say his birth name was William and his mother called him Jeffrey.
Yes.
He'd answer the phone. Hi, Bill speaking. Double. Right? So code switching is that thing. Right? My mate's broken.
Let me tell you, you know why? I had an individual. He used to come. I used to make sure he was studying. He had studies that would take him into IB. And in fact, he's there now.
Okay.
And he's doing very well for himself.
Good.
However.
See how I said it? Good.
Yes.
I can play along.
However, I told him, I said, listen, when you become a big shot, right? And you're walking, you know, they walk to lunch, groups of guys.
Right.
And I said, just remember me, okay? Remember where you started. Right. Remember the people who helped you to climb the ladder.
Sure.
No matter what small job they did for you to do it.
Right.
Okay? He says, Mr. Ferguson, I'll remember that. And I said, good. And you know something? Perfect scenario. I was walking on Reach Street, and I was across the other side of the road.
Okay.
And he was walking with this guy. You know, they walk with their hands in the pocket. They got their suits and the ties on and what have you. And he looked across and he saw me. And for that moment, our eyes just met. And you know what he said? He took his hand out of his pocket and he waved, Mr. Ferguson!
Here we go.
And I knew, I said, he's going to make it.
Yeah,
you know? Yeah. He's going to make it. Yeah.
No, exactly. So the code switching happens even on a Bermudian level. It doesn't have to be black.
Right.
It just, a lot of people discount their accent in order to
get,
right? But what's so good about a French accent or Italian accent or or any other accent.
But is that a code switching? Does that mean that you're in a particular box?
You think you are.
Right.
But as I told someone, like I don't know if I told it here on the radio before, but I had someone in my house years ago, years and years ago, and they worked at one of those big companies.
Right.
And they said that because they had to attend board meetings.
Yes.
So when there was a board meeting,
Yeah.
the hair got straightened, the skirt got longer, the whole blazer and skirt, like the suit that came out,
Right.
like I said, hair straightened and slicked back in a bun.
Yes.
The accent, non-existent.
Yes.
Gone. And as this person was telling me this, and in as much as this matters, this was not a very dark-skinned person.
Okay.
In fact, the exact opposite. And so doing all of this shocked even me because I thought,
Yes.
right? So as they're explaining this to me, that they make these changes, they saw I was disgusted. And they asked, like, what's going on? I said, well, I mean, there's a lot of things I could say about it, but I think the one thing that I do want to say
Right.
is you're not doing anybody any service here. I said, the company that hired you thought they hired a black Bermudian woman.
Yes.
You're giving them some neutral beige version of a woman, I guess, or of a Bermudian.
Yes.
I said, the young girls who might be in that business who look at you,
Yes.
the ones who do the mail or reception or typist, or they're looking at you and see you change up for a boardroom meeting to look what you believe is white or more acceptable in your definition. So you're not helping them.
No.
I said, so the company isn't getting what they thought they hired.
Right.
The people who witness you, who will come in your footsteps, they aren't being helped.
Right.
And you have to go through all this. What's all this about?
Yes.
Why? Okay, and so that was an insecurity.
Yes.
But if you call a spa to make an appointment, and that spa owner has someone whose English isn't their first language taking your information and you're getting frustrated,
Yeah.
why does that spa owner deserve your money?
Yeah.
Okay, we can go on like this, right? But so I wanted to deal with balance in immigration.
Right.
Okay, I don't think we've had discussion, not that I can remember, not on radio, just anywhere,
Yes.
about what international business and Bermudians want and need, and then let's just work it out. But like I said, if we're represented by people who don't believe in the inherent dignity of Bermudians, then they will say, oh, we're going to have the time it takes to be a PRC without any kind of
Yeah.
thing. You're not going to say, hey, IB, we're going to get to you right after we bring some Bermudians back. Okay, our priority right now is we've got people leaving. And we got to work that out.
Yes.
Okay, now we're not stopping work permits or anything else, but just understand we aren't making one new permanent resident until we bring back 10
Yes.
Bermudians.
Yes.
Instead, Cayman MPs are trying to be the most patriotic known to man after the fact.
Yes. It's true.
Sprinkle some patriotism and care about your people in advance.
Yes.
And what have I been saying all week? Prevention
is better than cure.
simple, simple pasa.
Yes.
Brethren?
Yes.
Yeah, go on.
I wanted to say I want to thank the listening audience to stay with us, because guess what? It's very important that we understand business in Bermuda, IB in Bermuda, what it takes for this country to run. And if we are not going to take an active part in it, and that means you may not be in it directly, but it does affect your everyday living. We need to make the effort to do it, okay? We got our children, we got our young adults, we have to groom them to take over these positions. And it's all about positioning ourselves through knowledge to be able to do it.
I was just letting that sit for a bit because that was so good. I didn't want to say anything and ruin it.
No?
I wanted to let the people just absorb what you just said. That was, can we just say goodbye now? I didn't want to try, I'm not even trying to talk over that.
Okay.
Thank you, listeners. Thank you for your patience in our calling this week, because I know immigration It's a very hot topic. And thank you for allowing the show to flow the way we wanted it to. When Billy and I talked about how important we thought it was.
Yes.
We thought we were talking about the economy and ended up talking about pride.
Yes.
And I'm grateful. We got people on the front line. Billy, what about you?
I am grateful. Yeah, for sure.
And those people are doing what needs to be done.
Yeah.
My brother, you have a good weekend.
You too.
I'll see you on Monday.
On Monday.
And callers, listeners, thank you so much for your support. We'll be back on Monday, 2 o'clock.
Bermuda Live on YouTube. Subscribe now.